Hello, and welcome back to the Five Factors Podcast. I am Tal Prince here with the technological wizard and sage that is Matt Adair. Matt, how are you?
Well, I'm fine. You're lying because if I was a technological wizard and sage, we wouldn't be here talking about this month because I am the guinea pig as we talk about smartphones and our struggles. But I am doing well. So yesterday, when this episode is releasing, yesterday it was my wife's birthday, and so very happy birthday to Lindsay, the occasional listener to our podcast. And
did you send her a text?
No, I put it on Twitter where she's not. You know, I said happy birthday to her on a social media platform
Quick
where
Instagram
she's not even
photo.
there. Yeah, isn't that great? So everybody can. Boy, what a thoughtful
love,
husband
baby.
you are. You know,
Yes.
It's fantastic. No, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm particularly enjoying that last little bit. So, yeah, things are good here in a hot summer in Birmingham, Alabama, and that is it. We are fresh off of a quick trip to the beach, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice.
So I didn't think to do a large scale Five Factors event there.
It's coming.
It's coming.
The meet and greet's coming, people.
Mm-hmm.
Just telling you.
These are things to know.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. So, but I'm
Secret
excited.
projects in the works.
Yes. And we're excited about those. But I'm also excited to be talking about just our smartphone usage, how we can do better. And today comes a challenge. Today, we begin to move into, okay, last week we really kind of covered, using some apps to monitor your usage. Hopefully you did that. Hopefully you're sitting there now with a good picture of, wow, this is out of whack dependent, or I feel good about where I am, or, hey, I can kind of take or leave my smartphone. But for those of you that are sitting more on, more on the end of, I'm not so sure this is great. Well, now we'll start to really dig into that and find out. And so I'm excited about this episode and to help us all use our tech more responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, again, you go to fivefactors.net/45 and get last week's episode and listen to that. We just kind of talked about the benefits of a different way to use it and did kind of just get you starting thinking about it. And so, yeah, if you're in this place where you're like, I think I need a little bit more freedom here, then that's kind of my story. And again, I said this last week when we started the summer, I just found that I was getting into some bad habits in terms of how I was using it. This really isn't even about, we're not really spending a lot of time in terms of what we use it for. We're just basically saying that whatever, like if you just go, I just don't like the effect that this is having on me because of how I'm using technology and how I'm using this tool, then here we are. And so we're going to be talking a little bit today about a step that I made that's been very, very helpful, and I hope it'll help you too. But one of the things that I think we need to make sure is as we talk about our struggles with our smartphones, it's a question, Tal, that I have for you as a therapist. Why is it that we get hooked on our phones? Because I know that some of us are country, but not all of us are country dumb. But sometimes we feel country dumb because it's like I should know better than to get hooked on this. Like I know that what I'm doing here is stupid and foolish. And so why is that happening to us? Why do we get hooked on our phones?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, well, really, I mean, I know that really what happens is it's a response to emotional distress. Any type of psychological, emotional distress that we have, it's very calming.
Yeah.
It's reassuring to have another notification pop up. It's you think about if you travel, and maybe you do, you're sitting in an airport.
It's
now,
overrated, by the way. Travel's just
it's not nearly as glamorous as many think. But if you watch people in airports, there is this, oh crap, I'm bored. I don't have anyone here that I know to talk to. I'm going to stare at my phone. And I think one of my favorite, and it's not a smartphone. This is way back in the days of the flip phone. One of my favorite instances of this is I was in LAX. And I'm sitting at a gate, and there's a guy walking down with the Motorola flip phone, the big, huge, like pyramid-shaped battery thing. And he is walking around the gate, and he is got his phone up and he is yelling and he is screaming and he is letting somebody have it. Okay. And I mean, we're, and because the hope is that we all now think he's very important.
Right.
And that is unacceptable. And if you don't, and then it's a whole bunch of cussing and yelling and, and all this stuff. And then the phone rang.
That's great.
Dude, I have never had more fun than that in my life, of just watching that go down. And that guy turned so red and ran. But I'm like, you still got to get on the plane. You still got to get on the plane with us, buddy.
So two things there. Number one, I don't believe that was your favorite airport moment, because you and I both have an incident involving Alabama fans flying to a bowl game that we'll have to save for another story. But number two, I think one of the things that's helpful there is that you basically said the issue with us, the reason we keep going to our phones is not necessarily the pursuit of pleasure, but it's basically to relieve distress.
It's to avoid discomfort. It's to numb, because what happened, and we talked about this last week, you're engaging the limbic system of your brain, the reward center, and it's just trying to get to numb. There's nothing particularly arousing. Where this fits on an addictive spectrum is it's the numbing neural pathway. It's not the arousal neural pathway. It is all numbing. And so it is to calm, soothe, and avoid any type of emotional distress, whether that is, oh, wow, someone thinks I'm unimportant. Oh, wow, someone thinks I don't have anything to do. Oh, wow, someone thinks I'm socially awkward.
Yeah.
Boom, we just kind of look at our phone, or, oh, geez, I'm just bored and I don't know what to do with boredom. So we go to it to soothe emotional or psychological distress, whether it's in an airport, in our office, in our homes. Because how many times have you had a disagreement? I don't know if ever any of you have conflicts with your spouse. If you do, though, how easy is it to just dive into the phone, to end the conversation, to end the conflict? Just to be like, whatever, and then just, stare down at the phone, stare down at the screen. It gives you a distraction. And so we're using that tech to soothe distress. That's very often when we're getting to extremes. Now, I mean, you're not, every time you look at your phone, it's not because you're under emotional distress. It's we're talking about those of us who have battled it on the extreme end. That's really what's happening. We become more dependent on that reward loop. We're not dependent on the phone. We're dependent on that limbic system and that reward loop. And that's how we know to make it give us the chemicals.
And I think the trigger here for us is the fact that if we're talking about this and this sounds familiar to you, if we say things like, look, you're recognizing that you maybe you wouldn't have put it that way. Maybe you aren't completely on board with the idea of it relieving distress. It is, whether you believe it or not, by the way. But I think we're on board with things where we keep thinking it's going to satisfy some need that we have. But the reason that we're on it an hour later or 3 hours later than we want to is because it doesn't quite do the trick. And so, so what I hear you saying is that the reason we go there is to get help, but it doesn't. It never is going to completely give us what we're looking for. No, I don't even mean that like in a massive, like ultimate spiritual sense. It's just that the tool is not designed to actually help you in the way that you want it to help you.
No, it can't do that.
Yeah. So basically, what we're trying to do then is to decouple ourselves from our dependence. For some of us in a way that it's becoming unmanageable, but for those of us who are probably listening to this, you're at a place where you're just like, it's just irritating me. I don't want to be that kind of person. And so we want to help you take steps. Now, what's coming up in the next couple of weeks, and this is why you should subscribe to the podcast, wherever it is that you're listening to this. Hit that subscribe button, and every Monday morning, you're going to get a brand new episode. And for the rest of the month, we're going to be talking about a different, better way for us to use our smartphones. So next week, we're going to talk about how you kind of establish some boundaries. We're going to actually give you a plan to live this out well. And then the last week, we're going to come in and we're going to answer questions. You go into our show notes. There's basically a link where you can ask us any questions about smartphone use, anything that you want to use, anything that you're trying to figure out. If we can help you give another perspective, or we can basically go ahead and challenge us. Let's work through this together. We'll come back and answer those things. But we also want you to see what's at stake and what we're doing. But today, what I want to do is to basically help you take a digital Sabbath. We want to give you one clear way for you to kind of break free that's intentional, that is time bound. So it isn't forever. It isn't somebody going and saying, I'm going to go take a 90-day fast from my phone. That's probably not realistic for us. But this is something that I started doing a while back, and it's been very, very helpful for me. So I'm just going to walk you through my plan, talk to you about some of the challenges, some of the benefits that I've experienced, just kind of help you dial in and plan this out. So here's what I've done. So I've taken, what's the Sabbath, first off? So we're taking a biblical concept where there's a 24-hour period that's really designed, when you look at this biblically, to pray and to play. First place where I heard that phrase is from Eugene Peterson, and I found that was a very helpful way for me to think about what I do on Sabbath. It isn't just a day off of work. There's some intentionality to it, but I am instead of working in ways that I normally work, I'm doing things differently. I'm spending this day praying and playing. So the digital aspect of this, so I'm basically doing this when I take Sabbath, which is a 24-hour period from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. That's my Sabbath. And so that's the day designed for me to intentionally pray and play. And so what I basically did was say, this is also going to be a day in which I'm going to disconnect from my smartphone, also from tablets and those kind of things. So that's what I'm doing here. And so the way that I did this is I have a home office and all my stuff goes in there and I just lock it from the inside. Like I can open it with my fingernail, for Pete's sake. So I can get in there if I want. But for me, yeah, no, for me, I just needed something that would designate that if you're going to do this, you're kind of setting this up with yourself, and you're kind of breaking this kind of thing that you've agreed to with yourself about that. Like when I started doing this, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell, my kids. It's like, I don't need to make a big deal of this. I just need to do this. So I just basically put everything in there and then just spent 24 hours without it. And for a good reason. I wanted to basically have more time to pray and to play. I needed to have more time to be who God created me to be, as somebody who's designed to love God and love people, particularly the people on that day who are family and friends, people who I'm closest to. I just wanted to give them my undivided attention as we spent that day together. Now, the couple of challenges that came up for me in this were, one is I will tend to, on Saturdays, whether I'm making breakfast or if I'm out cooking on the Big Green Egg or something, I would usually listen to podcasts or music. And so I don't think it was enough to say I'm not going to do those things. I needed to fill it with other opportunities. And so the opportunity there was for me to just go, today, I'm just going to spend time in silence and in prayer. And it was weird and still is a little bit. But it was one of those things that I basically gave myself permission and said, this is what I'm supposed to be doing here. Instead of listening to another podcast or a book on Audible or listen to music, that I'm just going to spend this time in silence and in prayer. Another thing is just kind of social media. And there's a couple things that I tend to do for my church on Saturdays that I just had to decide that between, sundown on Friday and sundown on Saturday, I either needed to set it up using some tools we have that you can kind of program it beforehand and schedule it, or I was just going to have to forget about it. It would have to happen after sunset on Saturday. And so, what I found is that was probably the most complicated part of it. It took a day or two, like we're out doing things and things that my kids are doing that are pretty cool and awesome, that probably more awesome to me than everybody else, but I think the world should see it. I just had to get away with that. My kids are still young enough to where they're not, mad at me when I post things with them. And there's been a couple times when my 7-year-old's been like, Dad, shit, oh, you don't have your phone. Okay, never mind. And then he's back in the pool, right? So that was a challenge, but I think it was an opportunity for me to just kind of break away from that. And then also just in terms of reading, and I tend to read a lot in terms of Kindle, and I tend to journal a lot digitally. And so it was just kind of an opportunity to enjoy the benefits of paper. And so that meant I had to plan. I had to plan which books I wanted to read, which magazines. Like all my magazines are on an app called Texture, so I had to figure out how to do that. So it was just an adjustment, but it was basically getting back to some real basic things that I found that would be helpful for me. So that's a little bit in terms of how I set it up. But here's really in terms of the benefits, I think, for all of us. I think for anybody who does this, and Tal, you can speak into this as I'm talking through this. I think that a digital Sabbath, this kind of one-day detox, it frees you, number one, from the fear of missing out, because you don't know what else is going on. And I think it frees you from overwork. Again, that's the idea of Sabbath in general. But I think there's this digital pressure that can happen to us that I should be doing more and more and more and more. And sometimes the struggle that we have on our Sabbath is the fact that we see other people doing things. And the only reason that we think about doing more is because we see them doing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's such a critical piece is the fear of missing out. I mean, and we hear it termed up that way. We also hear it kind of categorized or talked about as a mindset of scarcity, of, oh, geez, I'm less than. The real trick is the more we're engaged in social media, the more you're actually going to feel that you're missing out. Because you see all these things and you compare, and so many of us do that, where we start comparing everything and like, oh, geez, some of the greatest things you can ever do is not pay any attention to the news for a while, not paying attention to social media for a while. And so if it's 24 hours, great. To free yourself up of that and just enjoy those around you, or enjoy the silence, enjoy meditation, enjoy prayer, without distraction. It's a great benefit, but that fear of missing out is huge. And we also, so many of us, we build these cultures where people depend on us and they can access us all the time. Real easy for a pastor to fall into that. And I knew that was a major issue for me when I was pastoring, is I just created this dynamic where everybody needed me and they had 24-hour access to me. And then I got to the point where I resented the crap out of them, because there was no way that I could just enjoy my family without a text coming in. They're like, hey, I'm feeling like acting out. And I'm like, oh, crap. And so I'm serving no one well.
Right.
But now feeling pressure to serve both parties better.
Yeah.
And so putting those boundaries down are a tremendous help. It just reduces the amount of white noise, because the smartphone brings a lot of white noise into our life.
Yeah, it really does. And so what that does, on the other hand, is it doesn't just free you from certain things. It, some of the benefits is that it frees you for the things we talked about. It does free you for time in prayer. It does free you for time in listening and responding to God. Mm-hmm. And I found that it was really helpful for me in terms of sermon preparation, that usually on Saturday, I'm not going to go all in on that. I'm kind of taking a break, but it's just kind of marinating in the background. And so that's helpful. And then just in general, and then I think also for in terms of playing, if I'm spending less time on my phone, that means I have more time available for other things, and not just to be more time there, but to be more present in those spaces. And I think there's been a significant benefit to my family, because I'm not distracted. I don't have the AirPods in listening to Audible, and my kid has to repeat himself because he told me something, not seeing those little earphones in my head. And so I think that's been a benefit there. And so here's the secret that we're trying to get across. Okay, your struggle with your phone, while it has a lot of different implications that we have talked about and will talk about, physically, relationally, productivity at work, your emotional health, all that kind of stuff, it's deeply, deeply spiritual. And so to me, it makes sense for those of us who are not only followers of Jesus, but leaders in his church, for us to take this concept of Sabbath, which I certainly hope that you're observing, and to basically attach our phones to it as well, because it's become so much of our work life that it really does give us an opportunity to trust God with all of our life in a very real, clear, and tangible way. And I think that may be the biggest benefit for it. So here's what we want you to do this week. We want you to go ahead and plan your digital Sabbath. So you need to figure out when. And so again, we're talking about 24 hours straight where you're not going to be around your phone. So which means you may have to plan how you're typically using your phone. If you use it for an alarm, you need to find something else to do with that. If you tend to use it for other things, you may have to communicate with certain people that you're not available if you need to do that ahead. But we're talking about this week. We're not talking about doing it 2 weeks from now, but this week, a 24-hour period where you are going to put away your phone, your tablet, your laptop. It's not going to be where you can get to it easily. And I don't think that, you don't have to tell anybody. You might need to have somebody just say, hey, would you will you help me stay accountable to this? I just think this is important. I don't think everybody needs to do it. It's a boundary I'm creating for me, not for the rest of the world. Please don't announce it on social media. Don't be that person. don't be the person that's like, hey guys, I'm not going to be available for 24 hours. Quite honestly, probably nobody cares that much. And when you come back, they'll be like, oh, maybe they noticed you were gone. They probably won't. So I don't think you have to announce it to the world, right? But I want to make sure that as you're planning that out, create alternatives, create solutions to what you're resting from. So I said, here it was for me. I wasn't going to have podcasts and music, and so I needed to basically see that as an opportunity for silence, for prayer. The things that I would be reading digitally, I'm going to read some other way, or I'm going to go do something physically. I'm going to basically create an alternative rhythm of life for that 24 hours to fill in the blank. And then I think you just plan a little bit of time the day after to evaluate how did it go. So I have 3 basic evaluation questions that I use for everything. So here they are. Question number 1, what was the best part of it? What really stood out? Like what was the most significant benefit from that digital detox? Number 2, the next time you do this, what can you do different that will make it just a little bit better? And then the third question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how effective was your digital detox? That's just going to give you just your own attempt to be objective and something that ultimately is subjective. But I think you need a little bit of time just to evaluate it so that you continue to make tweaks and improvements to it. But this week, we want you to go ahead and plan it out and get ready for it. And our hope is you follow through on it, because I think this is a significant step to kind of just breaking through and breaking towards freedom in this different way of using a phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that, and it's all really helpful, another just kind of rationale and reason to do this is just to find out if you can. If you don't believe it's addictive, if you don't believe anything like that, or don't believe, you sound like the typical alcoholic, I can quit drinking anytime I want. Okay, well, let's see.
Yeah.
Let's just see. I can tell you from being in treatment centers to being a patient in a treatment center to being, on staff in a treatment center, one of the things that is a common thread is patients come in, the phone is taken away, so they have no technology, and they will be grabbing for their pocket 100 times a day. And they will be feeling the phantom vibration. They believe their phone is ringing. They don't have their phone on them. It's locked away in an office, but they reach for their back pocket because they feel their phone vibrating. It's a phantom. It is a trick of the brain that it is playing on you. And so let's just find out if you can do it. Just find out and just see how that goes. And yeah, I agree. Don't announce this on social media. Very often that may be some of you very subconsciously trying to seek attention of, oh, please don't go away. They're going to be just fine. They're going to be just fine. None of us are nearly as important as we would like to think that we are. And people are going to get along without you just fine. It's going to be okay. And nothing is that emergent that they must be able to send you a text. If you still have a landline, turn the ringer back on for that time. What I have found is people will text you about things that are far more minor. There's now a different level of calling somebody's house phone. So it'll truly be something serious more often than not if they're going to call the landline. So, but just see if you can do it. Just see how it goes. I would also recommend that you just journal through the day, or grab your feelings wheel out and talk with yourself about, how am I feeling? Right now it's been 6 hours. How am I feeling? Okay. It's been 10 hours. How am I feeling? Am I feeling disconnected? Am I feeling lonely? Am I feeling isolated? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling afraid? Or am I feeling happy? Am I feeling joyful? Am I feeling calm? Am I, really evaluate and check it several times during the 24 hours, just so you have a record to look back at as you go through those 3 evaluative questions that Matt laid out. It also gives you another scale there in black and white to look at and help you evaluate as to whether or not you want to make this a regular part of your routine.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just step by step, y'all. We talk a lot in our success path about kind of moving from awareness to action, and so we're kind of getting into this phase here where, as we're starting to pay attention to this and growing a little bit of awareness, now it's time to take action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's what we're looking at. We're seeing, okay, is this something I need to be aware of? Just kind of typical stuff. Do I have control over this, or does this have control over me? And is my life becoming unmanageable, as a result of it? Are my relationships unmanageable? Those types of things. Great questions to be looking at and asking. That's what we're trying to help you do. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, we're going to be back at it, and we're talking a little bit further about how we're going to do this, how to set boundaries, and really how to help decide whether or not we need a smartphone. Just to kind of walk through that, give us some metrics to look at that. And so we'll be doing that next week. And we just want to thank you again for listening. We appreciate you being here, appreciate you listening, and we always appreciate your feedback. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.